So with no delay, we're going to be starting with Papa 2028. And this task is found on page 125 of the task guide if you are following along with that. So before you read the task guide, what do you think crew resource management is? Give me some answers, folks. What's your definition of crew resource management?
Everyone aware.
Sorry, what was that?
I said everyone is aware of what's going on.
Yeah, everyone is aware. Okay, yeah. Anything else?
Everyone is involved in the execution of the mission.
Everyone is involved in the execution of the mission. Excellent, yes.
Planning out what each person's responsibility is in that crew, you know,
Yes,
and
yeah.
overseeing that it's done. Or
Very good, yes. Exactly, making sure that everybody knows what they're doing.
and that it's planned beforehand before we even get here.
So that would be great communication.
Great communication, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else want to add to it?
Crew is rested and fed and practicing I am safe.
Yes. Did you see my slide deck before we started?
No, sir, but I've been through this a time or two.
Excellent answers, by the way, folks. You're hitting the nail. So right now, let me show you what we've got it defined as in CAP, and that's crew resource management is the effective use of all available resources for flight crew personnel to assure a safe and efficient operation, reducing error, avoiding stress, and increasing efficiency. So you are all right. And all of those things also define it. They just like putting all of those nice things in a nice fancy little definition. So how do we do that? There's 4 fundamentals of good crew resource management. Situational awareness, which somebody mentioned. Communication, which somebody mentioned. Functionality, or the tasks that we're supposed to do. Somebody mentioned that. Oops. And assignment and coordination of duties. Somebody mentioned that. So you hit the nail on the head, folks. We're done. No, we wish. So let's take a closer look at each one of these then, shall we? All right, firstly, we're going to take a look at situational awareness. So what is it? Okay, simply put, situational awareness is knowing what's going on around you at all times. It's not just restricted to pilots. Everyone must exhibit situational awareness at all times. Each crew member must have their situational awareness at their peak levels while on missions because it takes everyone's awareness to keep the SUAS safe in flight. Everyone has their own unique positions and functions that require full attention. So their situational awareness is essential to the safe operation of any CAP flight, be it manned or unmanned. So what are some good examples of situational awareness attitude? Okay, what do you think? What do you think some situational awareness attitudes would be?
Paying attention to detail.
Attentiveness, excellent. Keeping your attention on the task at hand and at the details that it pertains to. Excellent.
Would health be an attitude?
Would what?
Health, would that be an attitude?
Which one?
I guess good health.
All right. Gee, somebody's going to figure out number 1 real quick here. Good physical health includes, you know, making sure you're not fatigued. Not like I was Saturday. For those of you at the Michigan Wing Conference, you understand that comment.
Yes.
Sickness, you're hydrated. you have, you've eliminated as much stress as you possibly can for the mission. I don't know too many of us that
Good
have
mental
no
health
stress.
fan. Good mental health.
Sorry, what's that?
Someone said mental health.
Oh, yeah, mental health. Exactly. So, we're all focused and clear. If we're coming off of an argument, you're likely that it's most likely that you're not focused on the task at hand. You need to have a clear head, and you need to make sure that you focus to get back in the game if that's the case, to gain back that situational awareness. So what do you think, number 4? What do you think the fourth one is? The fourth attitude that we want to take a look at?
Commitment,
Mission focus,
Mission focus?
or it's knowing what you're supposed
No, yeah. Yeah, and that kind of does fall into what it talks
Yeah,
about. It's
ask
inquisitive.
questions.
Always
That
asking
made you on
questions.
the same page.
Always asking questions, challenging ideas, asking for input.
Sir,
Those are the attitudes that make for good situational awareness.
sir, be assertively looking for things, like just not, see the overall picture. Ask questions if something doesn't appear right, or your intuition is telling you something doesn't look right.
Exactly. So our skills help too. Okay, they're very useful for situational awareness. Skills are broken down into 2 categories. We have our professional skills, and those are skills that are developed through training, practice, and experience. Anyone want to give me an example of a professional skill?
scanning technique.
Scanning technique. Okay. We don't even have to go into CAP. We see professional skills day to day. Our doctors, our accountants, our lawyers, right? Those are skills that they learned, many of them. None of us are born with the skill to be able to go in and do heart surgery. Right? So these professional skills are skills that are developed through training, practice. Excellent. So we also bring personal skills to the table. These are innate communication skills, interpersonal skills, basic courtesies, how we treat each other. Anybody else have give me any other suggestions for personal skills?
Knowledge.
Yeah. Knowledge, although comes from experience and training, knowledge sometimes the retention of knowledge for many people is innate, right?
Listening,
Experiential knowledge.
That could fall into both, right? Very good. Excellent. All right. Who said I am safe earlier? That was I've lost you
That
off
was
my
me.
list here. That somebody, we mentioned the I am
Captain
safe
Thompson.
earlier. There we go. Yeah. To help prevent a loss of situational awareness, we use the I am safe guidelines. All you pilots out there, you already know this. All right. You can take a nap while I go through this with everybody else. So the checklist is developed by the FAA for the FAA as a quick memory guide for aviators to run through and make self-determination as to their fitness to fly. This includes SUAS pilots and crew. If a crew member says yes to any of these, they really shouldn't be flying, or they shouldn't be doing any other task. So let's take a look at it. So I am safe. It's an acronym. Illness. Okay. Are we feeling well? Medication. Are we on any medication or drugs that are going to impair our situational awareness or our decision-making ability? Are we under stress? Okay, did we just, for the cadets out there, did we just have a major blowout with mom and dad? And we're going to go out and try to fly the sky DO. Yeah, no. Your wing DOUs don't want you flying under those conditions, right? For us adults, you know, going out, we just finished putting in a full day of a stressful job, and we've now been called to a mission. We may want to take a couple hours to decompress before we actually fly the mission. Alcohol. It's the same rule for unmanned pilots as it is for a manned aircraft pilot. Okay, manned aircraft pilots. What's the rule for alcohol?
8 hours from bottom of throttle, or is it 0.04 or 0.4 under those? Under that would be, you can't have alcohol under that. I mean, over that.
You got it. And the key one, the 0.04, that's a technicality. Let's stick with the first one. 8 hours, bottle to throttle. If you've taken a drink, you don't put a remote control in your hands. That's simple. Fatigue. Those of you who saw me on Saturday, was I in any position to be flying an SUAS on Saturday?
No.
I played a pretty. I played a pretty good game. That was because I probably had about 18 cups of coffee. I'll fill everybody in after when we talk later, but I'm just using that as a perfect, to understand where I'm coming from here. But yeah, I mean, there was no way I was going to be able to fly. Right? I was up for 36 hours at that point. And then enough. Now there's some that have emotional. I found I like this one better because emotional can fall under your stress. But so I like the one that says enough. Have you had enough food? Have you had enough? Are you hydrated? Are you going out? You're hungry. If you're hungry, you may rush the mission just so that you can go and grab that burger. So have you had enough rest? Have you had enough food? Have you had enough water? That's your E. I've actually made this as part of my pre-mission and my pre-flight checklist. My technician runs through the I am safe checklist every time I put a remote control in my hands before every sortie that I start. Okay, you never know if something might have happened in the interim time between the pre-mission and the pre-flight, because sometimes it can be 24 hours. Yeah, I'm feeling great today. I'm not fatigued. I woke up, I had a great night's sleep, and then I ended up having to drive 14 hours to the mission base. What's my fatigue factor going to be if I have to fly right away? So you want to be doing this pre-flight and pre-mission. This is going to come up again and again, primarily in the mission pilot sessions, but everyone should take note and devise a checklist that they can access at any time. There's several websites out there with the I am safe checklist. Find one you're comfortable with, bookmark it, print it out if you want. The key is to remember the acronym, I am safe. I actually make it as part of my, when I'm releasing a flight, I'm going to just pick one of the I am safes and say, what's the A in I am safe? Have you had any? I make it as part of my flight release, as a flight release officer. So we can enter a mission feeling fine, but sometimes we may fall victim to a loss of situational awareness. Okay, we probably could have had an entire 3-hour course on this alone, but we're only discussing the fundamentals here. I'll let you explore on your own some of these in more depth and I do encourage you to do so. Symptoms of loss of situational awareness vary, but let's take a look at those symptoms. Fixation happens when you get focused on an object or task that you lose track of the big picture of situational awareness. You become so fixated on the task or target that you become mesmerized. You actually forget to avoid an accident. In World War II, dive bombers sometimes got so fixated on the bombing run, they'd forget to pull up when they were flying their planes, and they'd end up crashing it into the ground. Those of you who are motorcyclists, like myself, you can get fixated on the direction and path you're going, or the wind hitting your face if you have an open helmet. You just love, the feel. You get so unaware of the dangers on your sides, and then you hit it, or you get run over by it. Right?
Sir, I was thinking about like my military experiences. I'm in a, let's say a hostile environment, and I'm in charge of the security of a perimeter, and there's, you can have something going on, let's say at one entrance on the west side of the perimeter. But I got to make sure that the people on the east side are focusing on the east side and everything out there. Because if everybody starts focusing on what's going on the west side, it could actually be a deploy to distract you for something to happen on the east side. Like what I'm saying is you have to divide that attention out. But that can happen with an airplane as much as a military situation.
Exactly. Oh yeah, exactly. I mean, think about that. Those of you who play chess, how many times do we try to redirect? We make moves on the right side of the board when actually we're going to be planning our attack on the left, right? So you're absolutely right. That's the whole point. So if you fixate on a point, you end up losing the big picture. Absolutely. Well said. So our next one is ambiguity. And I'm not talking what you might think I'm talking about. It's not being inexact. It's a cognitive bias that describes how we tend to avoid options that we consider to be ambiguous or to be missing information. We dislike uncertainty, and we therefore are more inclined to select an option for which the probability of achieving a certain favorable outcome is known. We always want to be favorable. We want to dismiss the unfavorable, right? So we need to understand and realize that there will always be uncertainty around us. We must always keep our minds open to be prepared to make a decision that we've never made before. We talked a little bit about this, ironically enough, in I believe our first session when we were talking about some of the things that having to do with our insurance. And we touched on it a little bit when we're talking, sometimes you may have to crash the drone in order to avoid a bigger catastrophe, hitting somebody's car. We don't want to do it, but if we hesitate in that ambiguity, we might still end up hitting the car. So we still always have to be cognizant of that possibility that we are going to have to do something that we really don't want to do. Complacency, that feeling of self-satisfaction when accompanied by an unawareness of actual dangers or deficiencies. An instance of unawareness or uninformed self-satisfaction. Another word that we like to use for complacency is cocky. Thinking you already know the answers. This one gets more people into trouble than you might think. Euphoria. The feeling of joy and bliss that isn't real. Everything seems to be going perfect, so you drop your guard. You start blindly trusting your intuition instead of relying on your training. Any poker players out there? No? If there are but don't want to admit it, you're going to understand exactly what I'm talking about right now, because I am. I'm sure you've all, any of you have all been hit with both the complacency and euphoria at the table. You'll find that most times these two go hand in hand. You either become complacent because of your euphoria, okay, or you start feeling euphoric. Remember, it's a false feeling of bliss because of your complacency. You get on a heater. Hell, nobody can beat me. So you start betting recklessly. You're so happy of winning. Oh, heck yeah, I can cover that bet. Next thing you know, you're felt it. Those two go hand in hand many, many times. So be careful of the one because you're more than likely to see the other at the same time. Confusion. This can be sensory, mental, or both. To be totally situationally aware, we rely on our senses to gather information in the environment around us. At some point, the inputs from our senses must be combined, compared, and contrasted to help achieve a coherent understanding of what's happening. If anything fails in that process, we become confused. And so basically, it happens when the brain receives information that it perceives as conflicting. Perfect example of this, I'm going to say maybe 4 or 5 years ago, there was a meme that was going around about the dress. Some people saw a white and gold dress, and some people were seeing, I believe it was a blue and pink dress. Okay, because there was something, there was a cognitive dissonance inside our brain that for some people, they weren't able to connect and make that picture the reality of what the other people were saying. So it caused a confusion. Distraction.
Sir,
Yep, go ahead.
I was thinking like when I was a student pilot, you know, I was learning to fly down south, and it was at sunset, and I'm going east. Then when I got ready to turn around, I'm heading west, you know, where the sun is setting. It's down south, and the humidity's higher. And it literally looked like fog. If you're going westbound into the sun, that sun with that humidity literally looked like fog on the ground. I mean, that would have, that really scared the daylights out of me. You know, so I'm calling the nearest control tower and like, hey, student pilot here, I need some radar guidance here. You know, just to get back home.
Go, for sure, for sure. So distraction, that one's pretty obvious. A distraction is anything that diverts our attention from the task at hand. Overload. This one is all cognitive. If we're doing too many things at once, we start managing instead of actively achieving. Okay, we begin to struggle to quote unquote barely keep our heads above water. You start worrying more about that instead of concentrating on what's actually going on around you. It creates a panic. Improper performance of tasks or procedures. Simply put, don't cut corners. Use checklists. Communicate with each other. If you're busy wondering if you missed something, you're going to lose your situational awareness because you're now going to begin fixating on that, which just tumbles more dominoes against you. Any question on any of those? Is it pretty clear? All right. So how do you get your head back in the game if you encounter one of these? Okay, so pilots and aircrew must realize that you can't have complete situational awareness at all times. The key is to have a plan to recover. When a crew loses situational awareness, it's critical to reduce your workload and threats. Suspend the mission if you have to. Stop doing complicated things. If you're in a hazardous situation, get out of it. Make that your priority, not the mission. Establish a flight program, a flight profile where you can safely analyze the situation. And the beauty of SUASs, at least quadcopters, if you're flying the quad, the hex, anything that can hover, just let go of the controls. It'll stay there. It's got GPS. Bring it down if you have to 10 or 15 feet. Let go of the controls. Let it hover. Figure out what you need to do and then get back to business. We're not perfect, so we've got to have these backups. Use the terms that we all know. Many of you are in the cadet program, are either cadets or are working with cadets. We teach, this is the first thing we teach brand new cadets within their first 2 meetings. We give them the wingman program. It's the first thing we do is teach them to say, knock it off. What does knock it off mean? Does it mean stop what you're doing because I'm pissed off at you? Nobody wants to take that? No, right? Nobody wants to talk back to me. Oh no. So exactly. What's knock it off mean? It means hold up. Somebody has seen something and we need to check it out first. Right? That's all it means. But we use the term knock it off. For some it may mean time out. We need a timeout. Let's time it out. Abort. Any one of those words are words that we learn. They're in the regs. Don't be afraid to use them. Once these terms are called, the pilot should terminate the task or maneuver, ensure there's no potential hazards, and if possible, establish a hover. Discuss it. Then get back to business if it's warranted. If the knock it off is valid, it is valid to the point where we now need to stop this. That's what we do. Again, I go back to what we did in the GLR mission there when I worked with Colonel Bomer. I had to call knock it off because I could actually see snow coming in before it hit us. And had to say, knock it off. Sir, there's a snowstorm coming in. We're going to have to put the bird down, because the last thing he wanted was a bird hovering 400 feet over a dam with snow coming in it and shorting it out and just going, we don't want that. Right? So again, use the terms that we're familiar with.
I was thinking like, sir, pre-agreed words that's understood, that without thinking, if the word is uttered, that you
And
see.
that's what the knock it off is in Civil Air Patrol and in the Air Force. That's why we teach it. It's the first thing we teach our cadets. Knock it off automatically means everybody stop. I used to tell my scouts you have to freeze even if you're in midair. And so if we use the terms that we know and they're in the regs, they're in the training, we're not going to get confused. So the next thing you want to do is you want to keep the cockpit sterile, right? Keep talk to the minimum. Make it necessary for safety only, particularly during the setup, the takeoff, any low-level flying and approaching that you're doing, and landing. This helps remove distractions and keeps everyone focused on the important things. You don't want to be chit-chatting as you're bringing that bird back. Right? Because what happens if you're chit-chatting and then all of a sudden, as you're bringing that bird back, something happens and you're not focused on the landing itself. And of course, you're always prepared to have that open communication in the event of an event. So again, it's important to understand a sterile cockpit. That talk is kept to a minimum in the sterile cockpit environment. And who controls that?
PIC.
The PIC. Exactly. Okay. So again, keep your talk to the minimum. If you can, get away from hazards and always try to establish a stable flight profile. And with the quadcopter, that's going to mean let it hover. 90% of what, if not 100% of what we're going to be flying are quadcopters, hexcopters. They're going to have that ability to just hover. We do have fixed wing drones, but I'll be honest, I'm looking at some of that and going, it's going to be a long time before many of us are trained to fly those, and for the missions that we're going to be looking at. Those will probably be more for AFAM missions, and those will become a specific training for very specialized pilots. Many of us are going to be flying quad and hexcopters. So I'm sure all the manned aircraft pilots already know this. Okay, in an emergency, you should always have this mantra in your head. It's a good practice to simulate potential problems and have that plan ready. And you always fly in this order: aviate, navigate, communicate. You must always be flying the SUAS. Even in a blowaway situation, you're still trying to fly. You're still going to be trying to manipulate the controls. If you have to, you're going to do an off and on. You're still aviating. Cutting the motors is still an aviation decision. Navigate away from problems. Making a decision to crash is still a navigational decision. Communicate with your crew. This is the time you might want to break sterile cockpit rules. You might be able to talk your way out of a situation and avoid further ones. So learn this mantra: aviate, navigate, communicate. Any questions on this? All right, because to paraphrase one of my favorite authors, Rudyard Kipling, if you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and looking to you for solutions, you'll be a pilot, my friend. So we talked earlier about using terms like knock it off or abort. We need to always respect our fellow crew members whenever someone calls this out. Obviously, there was a reason they said it. If during the discussion it's determined that there was an error in judgment, so be it. Don't ruminate over it. Everyone should be feeling safe enough on a mission to be able to say that. And that includes being safe to express their concern and saying, knock it off. We're always aware that lack of individual respect can cause alienation. And that's a serious barrier to communication and can shatter teamwork. If an individual is insulted or ignored when making comments, they will shut down and stop working with the crew. When this happens, the air crew must solicit input in order to pull that alienated crew member back into the mission. All right, so that brings up the next logical part of this, and that's barriers to communication. Who wants to tell me some barriers to communication that we could encounter in CAP?
Would it be lack of experience?
Lack of experience. Yes, excellent.
Afraid of command structure.
Command structure. Yes. Anybody think of any more?
Make sure everyone who's on the same sheet of music of what a particular phrase or word means. Just don't leave it up to common sense.
Yeah.
Preconceived notions.
Preconceived notions.
Difference in age, in the age, like an elderly guy and a younger guy.
Yeah. Some of it, don't forget, some of us are going to be flying with cadet technicians. Some cadet pilots may require us as a technician. Age and that, again, I always bring up my poor little cadet that for a full year I called him the wrong name. It wasn't until his father corrected me when I was talking to him about something else. I just turned to the kid and I said, "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because you're a captain, sir." So still doesn't give me the right to call you the wrong name. You can correct me. It's okay. Let's see if we got them all. Rank, we talked about that. Gender, we missed that one, right? Sometimes we unfortunately do have a habit of looking at the other gender and saying, I don't want to work with him. He's a man. I don't want to work with her. She's a woman. Or what's a woman flying? Right? Experience level, we got that. Age, we got that. And I think we touched on personality and a couple of the other things. These can all cause barriers to communication. You may occasionally be hesitant to offer an idea for fear of looking foolish or inexperienced. You also may be tempted to disregard ideas that come from individuals that have a lower experience level. We've all done that, I'm sure. Sometimes we have to readjust ourselves in that. If you're committed to teamwork and good crew coordination, you must look through such emotions and try to constructively and sensitively adapt to each personality involved. The bottom line here, our general attitudes play a major part in how we communicate. And we need to leave those chips on our shoulder at home. So you can best deal with personalities by continually showing personal and professional respect and courtesy to your teammates. Criticism will only serve to build yet another barrier to good communication. Nothing breaks down a team effort faster than hostility and resentment. Always offer opinions or ideas respectfully and constructively. Instead of telling the person you're wrong, you might want to say, I think the new frequency was 127.5 instead of 127.9. Find constructive ways to critique as opposed to criticize.
Having patience would be helpful too.
Very much so. Very much so.
How about being with a person that's always gung ho?
What do you mean?
The kind of person that's always not right, but that has like an ego problem or something.
Yeah, I mean, and we're going to talk about that in a couple of slides, but yeah, I'll touch on it now since you brought it up. Egos get checked at the door. I don't care if you're an airman basic or a general. If you're on my flight squad and I'm the pilot, I'm the guy in charge. Mine's the only ego that needs that I need to worry about. If you are a cadet basic and you are the pilot in charge, I don't care that I'm a captain. Yours is the only ego that needs to be that you need to worry about and that I need to worry about, because I'm here. If you're the pilot in charge and I'm part of your crew, my job is to make you look good. And that's where that experience level and that age come in, right? We need, as members of an air crew, we need to put all of these barriers aside. And like I said to my poor little cadet that I kept calling the wrong name, you know, forget my rank, forget my grade. Tell me I'm wrong so that I can correct it. If this was a flight situation and I'm saying the wrong thing and nobody's correcting me, what's going to happen? What's going to happen eventually?
Total confusion.
Well, not only that, but that may not happen this time, may not happen next time, but eventually it's going to catch up to me and to us, and it's going to cause dire consequences. Right? So never, and that's part of that whole communication, is we can't be afraid to correct each other. When we're part of a team, grade goes out the window. The rank is the mission pilot. And again, as the mission pilot, even though they are in command, also need to be aware that others have the right to correct them. And they need to make those decisions to say, yes, you're right. Or I'm thank you. I'll take, you know, what's that famous line? I'll take that under advisement. But if we do that and the other person was right, again, eventually it will keep up. But if we don't even try to make that correction, you know, it's gonna catch up. There's no doubt about it. All right, so moving on. Oh. Okay, give it a shot. So moving on, stress can have a very significant negative effect on cockpit communication. An individual's preoccupation with personal, family, or job-related problems distracts him or her from paying complete attention to mission tasks and communication. Depending upon the level and source of stress, the flight itself, personalities of the individuals, distractions, flight conditions, individual performance can all be sources of communication limiting stress. When stress reaches a very high level, it becomes such an effective barrier to communication and job performance that it's insurmountable. Many flyers and medical specialists advocate refraining from flying or other complex tasks until the stress is removed. We've all heard the term, you know, those of us who are older, we used to call it a mental breakdown. The new term, I believe, is a stress-related incident. Right? When the stress gets so strong, you just shut down. Remember the I am safe checklist if you're stressed. Because if you're stressed, you shouldn't be there. Task saturation, which by now I think that's where we are with tonight. But don't worry, we're almost done. But to be safe, I want everybody to stand up. Everybody stand up. Give yourself a stretch. Shake your head. Wiggle your arms. Wiggle your legs. There. All right. Ironically, you guys don't realize that we've been at this for 50 minutes already. Okay? So trust me. That's why I chose this little meme here. So when discussing crew resource management, we are sometimes confronted with too much information to manage or too many tasks to accomplish in the available time. This condition is referred to as task saturation. This will most likely happen when a person is confronted with a new or different situation. I think you all know what I'm talking about. You're all taking this course. So with task saturation, we form a tunnel vision, okay? It gets created and the individual loses track of many other important conditions. You lose focus of the big picture. In an advanced state, comprehension is so far gone that partial or complete situational awareness is lost. When individuals are task saturated to this extent, communication and information flow usually ceases.
Sir, is this the same as fixation?
I'm sorry?
Is this the same as fixation?
Very much so. Yes. Exactly.
And one thing I've seen from the air crew side is this can actually start when you get your mission information from operations and you start briefing the mission. You know, you may want to say, hey, this is not, you know, we can't really do this well, but you know, you kind of bite your tongue and go ahead, and inevitably you're going to get into task saturation.
Exactly. No, excellent. And as long as we are aware of it, we can work our way through it. And that's the key. And you've just hit the nail on the head. Exactly. Because we should never allow the work management situation to deteriorate to an extent that, I mean, we're adversarially affecting our ability to continue to safely operate.
Sir, I got a question because I'm thinking about something from my military experiences. Like you gotta because I can see this happening with the Civil Air Patrol. You know, you go out, you're in a situation where somebody sees something that's very traumatic that they never seen before, and it's so overwhelming. You mostly shut down, but you're not. You know, like you're there, but you're not really there.
Yeah,
Going through the number.
No, you're absolutely right, and that would probably fall more under stress than it would under task saturation, right? Because you've just been hit with something that and it actually goes back to one of those first slides when your body doesn't know what to do with the information it just received.
Right, like use, let's say, a civilian example, like you're riding in a convoy together, you're convoying with Civil Air Patrol vehicles. Somebody has a bad accident.
Yep.
You don't want to put that person behind the wheel of another vehicle. They don't drive anymore. You might need to go to the hospital, but
Exactly.
even if they don't, you don't want that person operating anymore, because they just seen or experienced something that they may not be processing yet.
Well, and if I can ask for clarification, when you say any more, for the time being.
For the time being, yes, sir. Just for that moment.
Yeah. Exactly. No, but absolutely. That's a good example, an excellent example of what can happen in a given situation. And yes, task saturation, stress, any of these can lead to that inability to function. And when we get to that point, whether it's through task saturation, whether it's through stress, whether it's through any of these things, then what we need to do is, just say, knock it off. We're going back to mission base. The mission is not that important that one of our members has to go through a physical or mental, for the lack of a better word, breakdown.
Yeah, and I think one of the key things I had to learn is I am safe is an ongoing throughout the mission. So for example, in an air crew, you might take off and everybody's fine. Then all of a sudden somebody's air sick. Well, at that point you have, you've missed the illness. So yeah, you were fine to take off, but something can change.
Exactly. And that's the whole point of this, right? I mean, it's all fluid. You guys are getting it. You guys are getting it. It's absolutely essential. And that's the whole point. If we're not aware of these situations, then we're not practicing good situational awareness. Absolutely. Okay, so you've heard me talking a little bit too much tonight. So again, I had everybody stand up, do a little wiggle, but now I'm going to give you some fun stuff here. Okay, I've spared no expense for this course. I have now brought the crew from the USS John C. Stennis to us, and they're going to show us excellent crew resource management. The John C. Stennis is a Nimitz class supercarrier with over 6,000 personnel on board. There's no better example of crew resource management than one of these ships. You're going to note that a huge portion of the interaction involves situational awareness, communication, task compartmentalization, and coordination. Everyone does one thing. They each do it well, and together the ballet that they do is a beauty to behold. And I am just going to pause my share here. I am going to have to redo it because I know I didn't check my little boxes for this. So hold on a second. Share my screen with my little boxes so that you can actually hear the sound. Do this and share. And everybody should be seeing a black screen right now. Somebody confirm
Yes,
that
sir.
for me? All right.
Affirmative.
Here we go. I spare no expenses with my special guests. Here we go. So what you guys think of that?
Always impressive for flight ops.
I think I've seen that video 100 times, and it just brings shivers down my spine every single time, just watching that bird take off. It was awesome. So we just saw how assignment and coordination of duties is essential to crew resource management. CAP aircrew duties are found in CAPR 60-3. Download it, read it. All flight-related duties are conducted under the supervision of the pilot in charge. The key is delegation. Each crew member to know what they are supposed to be doing at all times and under all conditions. Close attention should be paid during the pilot's briefing. We were talking about that earlier, right? The pilot will establish flight-specific safety bottom lines at this time, such as emergency duties, divisions of responsibilities. Everyone must clearly understand their specific assigned duties and responsibilities before launching the aircraft. Other phases of the flight also require that distractions be kept to a minimum, especially during pre-flight takeoff, safety check, and landing phases. The FAA has designated these phases of flight as critical and has ruled that the cockpit environment must be free of extraneous activity and distractions. Our cockpit may still be an open field. We don't have a bubble around us. We have to create an imaginary one and ensure that we follow that same safety that a manned aircraft would have, that sterile cockpit environment. I want to leave you with a final thought. Thank you. We develop situational awareness in layers. For us as SUAS pilots, the first situational awareness is developed around the remote control and ground station controller. Then we might expand it into the immediate vicinity, i.e. our technician, observers, immediate people around us. And then finally to the extended area. It doesn't come all at once. It takes practice. The stronger a person's situational awareness and the broader it expands, the better the decision-making will be. So that's it. Any questions on anything? So if there's no questions, I have placed, oops. Here we go. I've placed the link to the quiz in the chat. And I'm going to put that back up here. There we go. And so let's take 15 minutes to complete the quiz, take a break, and allow some of this information to digest.